Hi, my name is Devan. I'm an occupational therapist, and I have been one for the last 26 years. I have a special interest in the field of persistent pain, and I have a company called Pain Coach, which delivers mentorship, and I also run courses for clinicians. So that's anybody who wants to learn about pain, who treats people with persistent pain specifically, or acute pain, about pain. And I'm really, really excited to introduce Pain Bytes, my podcast. So Pain Bytes developed because I want to find new ways of helping people with persistent pain. And I really believe that this is one of the ways we can help people by me giving a voice to the pain experience. And I'm doing this through interviews with people with persistent pain who've lived through suffering and a pain experience and continue to experience suffering and pain on a daily basis. The difference for my podcast is that we are going to be looking at what helped them in their journey of recovery. What were the things, tools, strategies that really helped them to manage their pain experience better and to live really purposeful, meaningful lives again after they developed persistent pain. For our first guest, we have Louise Trewern, and she's a well-known pain advocate from the United Kingdom. She has a long relationship with the British Pain Society, and she's served on their committee, the Patient Voice Committee, and she's the immediate past vice chairperson of the Patient Voice Committee of the British Pain Society. She's also the lead trainer for lived experience with Live Well with Pain. And so I look forward to this episode, which promises to be a really good one. So welcome, Louise.
Thank you. And it's lovely to be here and nice to talk to you, Dashni.
Good, great. So we're starting off with, something that we've talked about now for a while. I'm wanting to know, when you were really in a space where you felt you weren't coping and, you thought, how much worse can this pain experience be? To just give us some context, around that experience of what that felt like. How bad was it when it was really bad?
I mean, I'd lived with this pain ever since I was a child, on and off, and gradually over the years it got worse. But it really started to go downhill rapidly when opioids came into the picture, really strong pain medication, namely, well, originally I was on the old MST contin, and then I was on Oxycontin, along with other drugs. And initially it worked really well, but gradually over time, I just got worse and worse. But I really firmly believed the problem was that my fibromyalgia and osteoarthritis were getting worse. And that's why I needed more and more painkiller. I hate that word, by the way, painkiller, because I think it gives us a false idea of what they do. It certainly didn't kill my pain. Yeah. And in the end, I was living in my armchair, basically, 25 stone in weight, miserable as sin, in absolute agony. That's sort of at my worst. I'm not engaging with anybody. I couldn't even bear the cat walking across my lap because the pain was so bad. I couldn't have noise, noise from the television, from lots of people chatting. I was sensitive to absolutely everything. Life was just agony, really, at the worst.
Yeah, it sounds like it was, that kind of space where you just wanted to curl up into a ball and you wanted everyone to leave you alone.
Yeah, absolutely how it felt. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. So now let's talk a little bit of what got you out of that, because it feels like it was a deep, dark hole, right? A
It
cave
was.
that you were in. Uh,
And,
what
I
was
can,
the thing that got you out?
I really believed I was going to die. That's how bad it was. I felt like, this is not getting any better, and the fibromyalgia is going to kill me, is how I felt. And so I went back to the doctors again in tears, asking for yet another increase in my drugs. And luckily for me, he'd reached the ceiling of what he could prescribe in primary care, so referred me to a pain clinic at my local hospital, Torbay Hospital. Um, where I met eventually when I got the appointment, I met the most amazing clinical nurse specialist called Dee, who incidentally I hated when I first met her because she was the first person that started to suggest to me that actually, you're in all this pain, you're on all these drugs, they're not working. And I thought, silly woman, what do you know? I'm on all these drugs for a reason. What's it going to be like if you take them away or even reduce them? But over the coming months in appointments, she started to teach me other strategies to cope with my pain, and suggesting that we should start trying to taper the dose. And I think I was on morphine equivalent of about 320 milligrams a day. Just that. On top of that, I was taking diazepam and codeine and Oromorph liquid, all these other 2 antidepressants for pain, lots of it. So I really wasn't good at that point with the idea of coming off at all or even reducing. And in the middle of all these appointments, I suffered 2 emergency admissions to Torbay Hospital for what they call opioid-induced impaction, which just meant that one Friday night I couldn't go to the toilet, even though the doctor was giving me sachets of stuff to help me go because I was on opioid meds, and it's well known that constipation is a side effect. Suddenly, out of the blue, one Friday night, I just couldn't go. And this continued all weekend. And in the space of that time, I had everybody visit me from, on-call GP, district nurse with enemas, paramedics, you name it. They all came to try and see what they could do. And again, I just wanted to curl up and die. The pain was absolutely horrific. And come Monday morning, an ambulance was called and I was whisked off to hospital and straight into theatre. Now, this happened twice in the space of a few months. And the second time I was there, the theatre guys, in a bid to reassure me, said, "Don't worry, my love. We see this all the time with people on opioids. We'll soon have you sorted out." And I thought, well, you ain't seeing me again, because I just wanted to die, both from the pain and the embarrassment. It was just absolutely hideous. So my next appointment with Dee, I went back and I said to her, right, I don't care what it takes. I want to get off this stuff now before it kills me. And I think, luckily for me, because of the emergency admissions, it gave the hospital, gave the team the criteria to admit me to community hospital for a rapid taper. So, and I was fully on board with this, even though I knew, I was a little bit of a guinea pig because they hadn't done it in community hospital before, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get off this stuff now. And the dangling carrot that actually life might be better off this stuff was too good to resist, because I knew my life was pretty shit, excuse the word, but that's how it was. So that was the plan. I was going to go into hospital, and I think I went in on a Monday morning and I came out on a Friday morning, and I came out on about 10, maybe 15 milligrams of morphine, of opiates, which I tapered over the following month.
Wow. Isn't that so interesting? The thing that actually started this unraveling of, of the negative part of your pain journey, or
Mm,
the thing that started you on the way back to recovery was actually hospital admissions,
mm.
and the threat of further surgery, and you kind of looking back and going, no, I
No.
don't want this. This is not okay.
Yeah,
I don't want this in my life. I'm done.
exactly.
This is it. I'm checking out. We
Yeah,
are done. I
yeah,
am not doing this anymore. And body, you better just get on board because I'm taking control now. So
yeah.
it was a bit like you taking control of your body at that point, yeah?
Yeah, because I realized that either way they were telling that Dee was telling me that I could life could be better. I wasn't believing her totally, but by the time these hospital admissions came round for the opioid induced impaction, I felt I had nothing else to lose, because that was about as low as I could go, I felt. And the clincher, I think, was when these guys said to me, oh, we see it all the time. And I thought, what? They thought they were reassuring me, but actually I was horrified at that idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, the fact that you needed to go into hospital to have that sorted out was just hideous, absolutely hideous.
Absolutely. A basic human function, right?
Mm,
But you now have to go to hospital for
yeah.
crazy, actually, to think about.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on from your hospital experience, and the thing that started your journey. And what I want to move on to is I want you to just think of, for me, so for the people listening, because we're hoping that people with pain are listening, people
Uh-huh.
who are indeed suffering and who need the help, and are hopefully going to take some of your strategies, tools, whatever it was in your experience. It might not be that, might just be, like you said, the
Mm.
nurse that you met. Um, what would you say are your top three or top five things that were your milestones, or things that just helped you on your way to recovery? What were the top three or top five that you can?
Well, yeah, I've got those. And the first one has to be, so the other person in that story of the hospital was a consultant called Andrew Gunatilica. And I feel like I literally owe my life to the both of them, to him and to Dee, because I really seriously don't believe I'd be here today, Darshni, if they hadn't got me off when they did. Okay, I
Yes.
had severe sleep apnea. Anyway, one of the things that Andrew said to me was, in order to manage the withdrawal from the drugs, pace the ward, because that will trigger the endorphins, the body's natural painkiller. I'd
Yeah.
never heard that before, and it had a huge impact on me. So I popped in my earphones and paced up and down the ward listening to music morning, noon, and night, because I had, the restless legs and all that business. Coming off the drugs was no picnic.
Yes.
Um, but that's how I managed with it, and it worked. So that really sort of was a proper aha moment. So then when I came out of hospital, I carried that on. Obviously, I didn't have the length of the ward to pace anymore, so I would dance in the living room as long as no one was looking. Um, and again, it had the same effect. I felt good for it. I felt really good. Considering previously to going into hospital, I had lived in the armchair. I hadn't done a lot of movement. And now I was moving all the time. So the benefits were quite quick for me to notice, and gradually kept on walking. And I went from using one of those wheelie walkers with the wheels on and the seat and everything, um, going to flat places and walking with that, and progressed to ditching that and having walking poles, until eventually I needed no walking aids at all. And I was able to walk hills as well. And it was just the feeling, each step was amazing. And, again, what I want people to realize is that you don't have to get out and walk miles. I wasn't walking very far at all in the beginning. It's about moving a little bit more than you did yesterday and just gradually increasing that. And it can be as slow as you like. So that was the one thing. The
Yeah,
second
and I
thing,
think that's quite an important number one,
yeah, yeah,
because I think that many people and many of my patients and people that I've treated, with pain, who've lived with pain, many of them struggle with the concept that if they move, it will be better.
yeah,
Because often, let's face it, when you move, it's sore.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you immediately your brain's kind of going, but it's sore. I don't want you to do that. Will you stop
Mm.
doing that? And you immediately think, oh well, then maybe I shouldn't do that. And that's how we end up having the problems. So
Exactly.
it's really great that for you, it was just pacing up and down the ward, and you
Yeah,
suddenly realized I can do this, and this makes me feel better. So maybe I
yeah,
should
yeah.
do it a little bit more. I think it's great. Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I think, even now, which are what are we now, almost 7 years after coming off opioids, if I sit down and I sit there for, an hour, when I get up, it hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts. But as I keep moving, that eases off. And I think it's sort of letting the brain figure out that actually it is okay to move. Yes, all right, it'll hurt a little bit in the beginning, but it's going to hurt if you stay on that sofa. And
Yeah.
actually, for me, the more I stay on the sofa, the more it hurts. So I'm much, much better for getting up and moving a bit.
Yeah.
And it's just about realizing that you don't have to do an awful lot in the beginning. Um, and that pain will ease as you keep going. Just keep going. But sit when you need to. Don't push yourself too far. A saying I've heard recently, which I really, really like, um, I first heard it from a lady called Betsan Corkill, who runs an organization called Stitch Links. And she does Tai Chi, and she said to me once that it's about moving within our soft limits. And I really like that.
Yeah, I like that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's right. You just keep going until you feel like you absolutely need to stop, and then just stop.
Yeah.
And take a break and then go again. And that's how I approached my walking for the first year after coming off opioids. I would go out and walk and stop and walk and stop and walk and stop. And it would take all day, but that was fine. That was absolutely fine.
Yeah, and I think the fact that you persisted, that's the key, right? It's the
Mm.
fact that you kept going.
Because the other element that is so, so important,
Yeah.
especially for people in pain, but even people with any health condition,
Yes.
is that the main ingredient in getting out like that is nature. Getting
Yeah.
out in the fresh air, wherever you happen to be, even if it's in a city or a town, just get out of your four walls and go and notice what's outside. And that makes such a huge difference to your well-being and how you feel. I often think if you sit indoors looking out, your problems feel enormous. But if you get outside, even in the rain, it feels so much lighter. Um, yeah. So
Yeah, it's that feeling that if you're indoors, you're kind of in your prison.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah. But if you go out, it's well, look, there's the whole world out there, and
yeah,
I'm no longer kind of isolated in my little prison. I'm actually outside now with the
yeah,
rest of the world.
yeah.
And you might not be participating
No,
technically with the rest of the world, but you're part of the rest of the world when you're out there, right?
exactly. Yeah,
When you're
yeah,
indoors, you're not part of the rest of the world. It can feel, and I'm not saying that people who live indoors a lot are not part of the world, but when you spend a lot of time by yourself indoors,
yeah.
socially isolated, it can start to feel like you're not part of the world anymore.
Yeah, you're just so inward looking,
Yeah,
which is natural,
yeah,
and everything feels twice as large as it actually is.
yeah,
Um, and even if you don't speak to anybody when you go outside, I just think it feels as though your load is lighter
yeah,
because it's just naturally I don't know what the word is. It's just lovely when you get outside and breathe in the fresh air, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't
Uh,
have to convince me. So I'm a mountain biker.
oh,
And
well, there you are then.
you, honestly, lots of people are like, why don't you cycle on the road? I'm like, why would I? It's
Yeah.
boring. It's like there's nothing to look at. There's cars and buildings. But when I'm on my bike in the forest
Oh,
for hours at a time, it
yeah,
is the
yeah,
most amazing experience. Just
yeah.
looking at the trees is enough for me, you know?
I'm a bit
Uh,
of a tree freak actually when it comes to it, and I have been known to go up and hug trees, and because I just feel such a
why
strong
not?
connection with them. Yeah,
Absolutely, why
I
not?
love it, love it. And
Great.
I
So
encourage, I lead 2 walking groups as well, and I can encourage as many of those as I can to hug
yeah,
the tree.
why not? Touch it,
Yeah,
touch
yeah,
it. Not
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
bite you, touch it.
exactly. Yeah,
So number two is nature. What would
yeah.
number three be?
Well, for me now, this is probably quite a personal one because not everybody is able to do it, but I do sea swimming. And actually I use the word swimming in its loosest form because I like to call it swimbling, which is a
Okay.
bit like a bimble or an amble,
Yes.
um, but in the water. And because I don't jump in and go powering off, I can't do that. I get in and just have a bob about in the water and go up and down the seafront, and that's enough for me. And it came about because in lockdown from with COVID, I one of my problems is osteoarthritis in the knees, and one of my knees was playing up really quite badly. And Dr. Francis Cole, who's co-founder of Live Well with Pain, said to me, Louise, you need to get your knees in the water. Go down to the seafront and just paddle up to your knee, and the cold water will reset your body's pain systems. And I'm like, yeah, all right then. But I did it. And again, she was right. And it was fantastic. It felt really good. And gradually over time, I ended up completely in the sea.
Yeah.
And I got addicted very, very quickly because it worked and it made me feel so great. So
Yeah.
now I do it all the time, although I haven't done it since September, and I like to go all through the British winter. But I haven't been able to because I got poorly last year and it got too cold, and so now I've got to wait, and it's really hard.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, especially
Mm.
for something that you know works for you.
Yeah, it's fantastic for pain,
You'd be so
mental
patient to get back
health.
out there. Yeah, yeah. And it's also being in nature. So it's just a
Yeah, yeah.
different version of it. It's not being in the forest or walking on a
Hmm.
trail, in the grassland, but it's being in the sea, which is another form of being in nature. But it's
Exactly.
almost being in the sea is almost like immersing yourself in nature
Yeah.
because you get into the water and
Oh,
then
it's
water
beautiful.
surrounds you completely.
Mm.
It is completely in contact with you.
And for me, it's the colder the better, really. That zing you get. Um, Obviously with the safety caveat that you shouldn't get into cold water unless you're used to doing it.
Yeah.
Um, don't do it alone either. But yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic. And I mean, I'm sure you know from your mountain biking that I find the walking and the swimming are two really good and easily accessible forms of mindfulness as well, because you don't think about anything else. You don't think about your problems or what you're going to have for tea or what you need from the shop, because you're either too busy looking at the surroundings, or if you're in the sea, you're too busy concentrating on staying afloat. And it's just, and I think those are the reasons why it works so well, is because it just clears your mind completely.
Absolutely. And it just immediately connects you to yourself
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
without effort, right?
Yeah,
Without effort,
yeah.
you're just like, okay, there I am.
Mm.
This is me. This is who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if you haven't tried any of these things, it is difficult to believe. People still say, oh, you're a complete nutcase getting in the water when it's like 10 degrees. But, it works. And
Mhm.
until you try it, you don't know.
Yeah.
But it is also, when you live with chronic pain, it is also about finding that thing that works for you. So just because swimming and walking work really well for me, and there is another one as well, an exercise bike, that works wonders for my osteoarthritis. But just because those things work well for me doesn't mean they're going to work well for you, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the whole reason that I started this podcast, is just to, have conversations with many people who suffer from pain, because I think we will eventually have a library of
Yeah,
things
yeah,
that
yeah,
work for people. And then if you listen to the podcast, you can go, oh, well, let me try these things. Okay,
yeah.
these don't work, but maybe this other thing might work.
Something might resonate.
Finding that one thing
Yeah,
that
yeah.
starts your journey to recovery, I think
Because
is,
look, the point is, so we can't, so painkillers, I don't like the word because it doesn't work. Yes, they have a place, and they have a place mostly for acute pain, if you have an accident or something. But for chronic pain, no, it's not very effective at all. So for me, it's about moving the pain from here. Oh, can you see my hands? I don't know if you can.
yeah,
So
yeah,
right in
yeah.
front of your face to sort
Yes.
of to the side so that you can now see where you're going. So the pain
Yeah,
is still there, but
yeah,
you're living well with it now because it's not blocking your view. You
yeah,
can, you've learned to not take quite so much notice of it. And again, lots of people like to find the little metaphors that work for them. Some people like to think about, you know, folding up their pain into a tiny little pack and putting it in their backpack.
yeah,
So it's still there, but it's not so much of a hassle as it was before. Because when
yeah.
it's right in front of your face, you can't see the wood for the trees, literally, can you? So
No, no, and so that really, I think, is quite valuable for people to hear. It's the fact that you can actually shift your pain.
yeah, yeah,
You can shift it from the role that it has in your life, where it consumes everything,
yeah.
where everything is about the pain. From the moment you wake up, all you
Mm-hmm.
think is pain, till the moment you go to sleep. And even while you're sleeping, you can't sleep because there's pain.
Yeah,
So it's about the fact that actually it is possible to shift it, because it's not that you don't have pain. Pain just has a very different role in your life now.
yeah, yeah. And
Very
I
different
think
from what it used to be.
part of the problem, I think, as well, is that so many times, especially with the way systems are set up, I don't know if it's the same where you are, but certainly here in the UK, if you can't work, then you almost have to prove that you live with pain so that you can get some benefits for that. Now, I think the problem with that is that that requires you to totally inward focus on it so that you are proving the point. And then, of course, the problem becomes that because you've been possibly granted that benefit, now you can't be seen to be going out walking to manage it
Yeah,
because
it's
you're not
it's
supposed to
kind
be
of
able to do that.
yeah, it's kind of like taking a Cokie and just highlighting the word pain, you
Yeah,
know. It then becomes like, okay, we're now going to just make it a really important thing, because without this thing, you can't get the money that you need to
yep.
survive and pay your bills.
Hmm.
And because you now have highlighted it, well, now we can't take it away because we need the money to pay our
Yeah,
bills.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So it's
Yeah.
got to always be there, and that
Mm.
is problematic. I agree. I
It
agree,
is.
and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
right. It's that way, I think, all over the world, and we have that problem in our
Mm.
country as well.
And I mean, I asked for a reassessment and I was so thrilled because I had been given what in the UK that it was called an indefinite award at one point because I'd been on it for so long. They
Yeah,
just sort of gave me an indefinite thing and wrote me off basically.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so when I got what I considered to be quite a lot better, I asked for a reassessment myself, which in lots of ways disadvantaged me because I lost the benefit. I lost my new disability car every 3 years, and all the money that came with that to help me live. Um, but all I could see and celebrate was the fact that I was off it. I wasn't disabled anymore. I was better. Now,
Yes,
my idea of better. Now, I still have the pain. I still have fibromyalgia and osteoarthritis, but I
Yeah.
consider that I am living my best life with it now.
Good. Yes.
So, and for me, quality of life outweighs everything else.
Agreed. Absolutely agree with you. So, Louise, is there a number 4 in your list?
If there is a number 4, I think it's music for me. Um, before I came off the opioids, as I said earlier, I couldn't bear any noise whatsoever, even the TV. When I came off opioids, I was listening to music in the hospital, and I've been listening to it ever since. And I came out of hospital like a hyperactive teenager initially, and wanting loud banging music everywhere I go. Luckily for everybody else, I have it in headphones now, so I don't upset everyone. But music really lifts me. And you can have a little dance when nobody's looking, or even if they are, who cares?
Yes.
You
Yes.
know? So yeah, I think music is really, really good for the soul as well as everything else. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to agree with you. I'm also a bit of a dancer, so I love music, and I can also bop in the shop while I'm
Yeah,
like, um, and other people do look at you, go like,
they do. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I do
what are
it
you
in cafes. I'm sat there with a cup of
doing?
coffee
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm just
like it's in
they're
my head.
thinking,
Going,
exactly,
yeah,
the
but
silent disco.
yeah, exactly. But it's great because that is that one thing that you're right. It does uplift you. It
Yeah.
makes you feel better, and you do have to look for those things because
Yeah.
those are the things that improve your quality of life,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
improve your experience of life. And sometimes music is, it's different things for different people. Other people find music quite emotional. Some people find it calming. You can use it in many ways. It doesn't just have to be the dancing, get
No,
going
no.
music we like. So I think it can be many things,
Mm.
or even for one person.
It's
Okay.
vast, isn't it? And people like all sorts, from classical
Exactly.
to
So you,
rock and roll. So
and everyone will like something else, I think, as well.
yeah, yeah.
So then, before we end off, the one thing I do want to ask you is if we were talking to someone who had immense pain, so thinking back to the days when you were on
Mm.
your opioids and you couldn't see, the wood for the
Mm.
tree, you were just like, I'm gonna be here forever. This is really not gonna work for me. How can I find a way, out of this when you were in that deep black hole? So
Mm.
if we're talking to someone who's in that space, what is the one thing, and it can be something that you've already spoken about, but what is the one thing or the one tip or piece of advice that you would give them to try and help them to just try to climb? Because it is a climb,
It
you're
is a
gonna
climb.
climb
Yeah.
out. It's not
And it's
not
not
quick.
quick.
You're not going to get there quickly, but
No.
if to start that climb, to start that journey, what is the one thing you think would help?
It's difficult to put it into one thing really, except I would say I believed life wasn't going to get any better. I believed I was going to die. And I think a lot of people probably feel like that when they live with chronic pain. And actually, I think me and people like me who have come out the other side are living proof that things can and do change.
Absolutely.
So don't assume that where you are now is it for life. So there's a few things. If you're on a lot of meds, I would suggest, and you think that anything I've said has resonated, obviously, again, safety caveat, you must not stop taking any of these meds without getting advice. But if you think it's playing a part, go and see either a pharmacist or your prescriber, and just have a conversation and see if you think, that it may be making things worse, especially if you've been on them for a long time. I would also suggest that something that I think a lot of us advocates are agreed upon, it's really good to try and find your people. So, you're not alone. I know it feels like you are, but there are thousands and thousands of people all over the place living with chronic pain. And there are some very, very good, positive support groups out there. So, search them out on the internet or even locally where you live. There might be a support group up and running. Ask for help. Don't be afraid to go and ask for some help, because, you know, I think the most isolating feature of chronic pain is feeling like you're all alone in the world, even if you've got a house full of people.
Agreed. I completely agree. Okay, so we've come to the end of my conversation with you, but just towards the end of the because we're at the end of the podcast, what I would like to do is just give you 5 minutes to tell people about what you do, because you're a pain advocate and you work with Live Well with Pain, who I use even as a clinician. And I think is an amazing organization, but also maybe just to share a little bit about what there is, and maybe to give their website details or how people could get, could get that resource.
Yeah.
I'll share my details for me if they need to.
I love it. I love Live Well with Pain because they came into my life the year after I came off of opioids, came down to Devon where I live, and made a film about my experience, which can be found on the website, which is livewellwithpain.co.uk. It's free to register. And there are lots of resources on there, both for people who live with pain and clinicians who work with people who live with pain. And it's all free. It's a not-for-profit website, and it was set up by two people, Dr. Francis Cole and Dr. Emma Davis. And the work only gets done on there when they manage to get some grants for it. So there's no profit in this website, and they do not take any money from drug companies. So that's one of the things I love. And also the fact that we, people with lived experience, are key to developing the resources and now delivering the training to healthcare professionals. So it's a website and a cause that's really close to my heart, and the resources are just so good. There's lots of stuff on there for people to help answer your own questions. So go along and take a look at that.
Yeah.
And I also want to give a shout to the Physiotherapy Pain Association, who I also do some work with, because they've been very supportive of me, as have the British Pain Society, and Flipping Pain, all good places to look for information about your condition and how you can deal with it. Maybe the ideas of what might help. So, and you can follow me on Twitter, well, X, formerly known as Twitter,
We did
by
say it now.
looking up Lulu Scorpio. And there's also, I don't know if we're able to put a link on somewhere, Darshni, but I also run a closed Facebook group for people that are tapering their opioids, and we've got quite a few hundred people in there now. But it's
so I will look to see if we can put a link up.
a link, yeah.
But otherwise, just to say to people, you can also just mail me on info@paincoachsa.co.za, and I will happily give you Louise's details so you can get into contact with her directly for any of these resources or any other reason that you need to. Louise, thank you so much for your time. Well, sorry, only for pain.
Can I mention one more quick thing?
Yeah.
One more quick thing.
Yes,
I mustn't forget this, because this was something we were all really passionate about in lockdown. A lot of us advocates and professionals that work in pain got together, and we formed the Footsteps Festival for people who live with pain. And again, there's lots and lots of resources on there as well for people to access anytime they like, because it's all recorded content.
It was amazing. It was really cool.
Oh, thank you.
Cool. I referred some of my patients to it as well. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it was cool. And I'm in South Africa, and Louise is in England, guys.
Yeah.
So who says people can't help each other across the world? Who says that's not possible? I've used the resources from Live Well with Pain for my patients here in South Africa, and it's worked. So yeah.
Pain is global, and and the people like me and Darshni and those others that are passionate about helping people, we're all global as well. So there's no boundaries anymore.
no boundaries anymore. Absolutely. And I think COVID also took away a few more boundaries
Yeah,
because we're
yeah.
so comfortable with Zoom. We can look, we're talking on Zoom.
We're all over it.
Yes. Thank you, Louise.
Uh,
Thank you so much for your time and for
You're welcome.
sharing the things that worked. I truly hope it's going to help, even if it just helps one more
Yeah.
person to overcome their pain and live a life worth living, with meaning, with purpose, and thriving.
Yeah.
Despite their pain. I think then we've done our job.
That'd be
We've done.
wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you so much and good night.